Well, Diamondback is a small business in context with, I think we have grown, so we know that we're a small business because, to put it in context, it took us, we're 26 years old, it took us 23 years to get 4.5 million customers. And in the last 4 years, we've actually gotten double that. And that was done without people coming to our branches. We didn't increase our branch network. People didn't come into the branches and they used their mobile phone. Now, considering that we're in a country of 190 million people and only 30 million are banked, so it just tells you that we are still a small business in terms of the number of customers that we can use on our platform. And so I think the whole idea is that businesses, I think that story just tells you that technology is enabling us to reach more people, create more better customer experiences, and also do it in a very cost-effective, safer manner. And so if we can do that as a business that's been around for 26 years, imagine the opportunities for businesses that don't have to go through legacy systems that we might also have as well.
Thank you. So I think we'll go next to me and talk about Flutterwave. We spoke earlier, you've done 39 million transactions in the last 2 years in terms of volume you've done. And I'd like to understand what you do with big data and how it relates to small businesses in Nigeria that you can service.
Absolutely. So Flutterwave is very simply a payment processor. We make sure that all your transactions can essentially be made from the merchant side and also from the consumer side. And over the last 2 years since we've been in business, we've accumulated quite a bit of data around consumer spending patterns, around consumers' buying patterns, around merchants' flows in terms of their revenues. And we're thinking about interesting ways that we can leverage that data to help our customers. First of all, and our priority really, keep them safe online. And so we've invested quite a bit around big data for fraud, trying to understand general patterns around, especially fraudulent merchants, which are a huge problem when it comes to our own payment system. And then also even just thinking through when a customer makes an abnormal transaction, trying to give them tools to help them verify that transaction and verify that they are the ones making that transaction. But other interesting areas in terms of how we're helping small businesses, we actually launched a product, we beta tested a product very early in the year, a loyalty product, which we called Flutterwave Rewards. And it was a very interesting product because for the first time, simply by leveraging the cardholder's details, which is something that no one has ever done before, we could, at the point of transaction, effect a discount. So imagine you walked into a store, right? Let's say Spa, right? And because you've been coming to Spa every week, and we can see your card details, you always use your Diamondback card to make a payment at Spa, we can basically say, hey, all Diamondback customers that go to Spa can get a 25% discount. And no one needs to even know. Diamondback can, from their system with us, just effect a very small change. And it basically applies to everybody who's a Diamondback customer. Those are the kind of experiments that we're currently doing today to figure out how can we leverage the wealth of data in our systems to be able to support our businesses, both small and big.
Well, thank you very much. And so I'll go to Wale now. And I want to ask this question also in relation to what he's talked about. How Microsoft, which is a very big business, employs or uses big data in servicing small customers, especially, shall we say, specific to Nigeria.
Yeah, thanks for that. So primarily the way we look at it is providing a platform that allows you to leverage and use big data. We've provided implementations of big data inside our cloud, which is available to everybody in Nigeria today. Small businesses can leverage this cloud platform. We have something called Hadoop. We call it, it's an implementation of, for the techies in-house, an implementation of Hadoop called HD Insight that allows you to basically configure easily, data sources from either social media or different, maybe it may even be open, unstructured data, and then leverage that to really drive your business. I think in the years past, This used to be a technology that costs, millions of naira to get, and then you have to buy it and put in your own data center. A small business today can go online and register on Azure for a fee and say, I want a big data implementation done by clicking a button and then connecting to the various data sources, and as a result of that can then use that. We also have another solution called Microsoft Social Engagement, MSC, which is an implementation in the back end that leverages big data to get information from social media, so whether it's Twitter, Facebook, etc. And then you can get sentiments about how your brand is doing. So at Diamond Bank NG, you can easily get sentiments around that to know whether people are happy or a particular hashtag. So you could say #Techfest. What's the sentiment around that? That is all leveraging big data. For a small business, I think if you're leveraging big data, you could use that to drive customer experience, drive marketing, etc.
Okay, thank you. We've talked through the advantages. I wanted to ask about, from a banking perspective, the constraints you have and the concerns you have about safety, fraud, and the general environment around big data and your customers.
Okay, and that's a very good question. I think the first constraint is, in a digital machine learning world, I think the first constraint is the humankind, and that one is doubt, change of culture, and then people coming from different mindsets. But I also think in Nigeria, part of the problem that we have is that we have different parts of the country in different stages of evolution, right? So you have parts of the country that are in the second, third, and fourth industrial revolution. Here we are in Lagos, where we're leveraging or talking about AI, machine learning. In other parts of Lagos, 30 kilometers down the road, they still don't have sustainable electricity. And if you don't have that, you can't even start talking about leveraging on data. So I think the first here in Nigeria is creating different types of solutions and channels for different parts of the country, especially if you say you are a national bank. I think the second one too is also regulation. Regulation from the aspect of your business models are changing, but you are now, so there's different business models where you're seeing a continuum of businesses, where you're seeing merger of retail and banking, but you have a regulator who's looking at you from a silo perspective, which is banking. And so when you say you want to go beyond banking, when you say you want to use partner and collaborate to create new products, it's going back to a regulator. When you say that you want to employ artists and non-bank people, you're restricted in terms of how many years banking experience does this person have. But that banking experience is no longer required because machines like Ada from Diamond Bank are beginning to take that relationship banking requirement out of you. What people want to hear now is, how can you make me happy beyond banking? So those are the constraints we have. It's actually predominantly people, and people taking different mindsets and perspective. And then you also have the infrastructural constraints because Nigeria is a developing country at different stages of development.
Okay, thank you. So I want to ask you a supplementary question, and then I'll let you guys take off on the basis of that. And it's in relation to the constraints of what you're doing in Nigeria. Now, I think we can have an event like this in Lagos, but I suspect it would be difficult to do this in Asaba or a small, less populated, less empowered state. And I'm thinking, how do you see the possibility of growing out of Lagos? Does that geographical spread, if you're stuck in Lagos, is it possible to expand across the entire country? How do you have a national footprint? And how do you intend to do stuff like that in terms of expanding to meet the aspects of the market that can't get to Lagos? So I'd like you to take that question, and then you can take in turns.
Well, I'm lucky. I think you must have been listening to a question someone asked me. Someone hijacked me out there and asked me, when is Techfest going to come to the South? And I said, I started making excuses like, the cost, the logistics, and he says that they do this kind of thing in the South, but maybe not at scale. And so that's the whole idea of Techfest, meeting people that say, we're doing this, so we're going to go and see how we can do it. But I think the whole philosophy is, think big, start small, act quickly. So I think the first thing is to create a platform that people can come to and use the resources available in that environment, where that's what you're going to, and that would encourage people to say, okay, and all the stakeholders, government, if this is what is happening, with a bit more resources, with a bit more thinking, we can now actually become like these other places. So I think it's definitely doable. We can't say you can't do it. If we don't think that, then we won't go there. But we are definitely going to be doing these things in every part of Nigeria.
So my particular question is the challenges: infrastructure, logistics, people. How do you surmount these things?
I think for me, well, first of all, I actually don't agree that you can't do this at scale anywhere else. I just think it'll look different. Lagos people like to think the whole Nigeria is in Lagos. It's too small, But I think if you went to Kaduna, they're doing fantastic things there. The guys from that do this, there's a South-South conference in Port Harcourt. There's a conference there I've been to. They're doing stuff. So they're going to look very different because the problems that they're trying to solve are very different, right, from what we have. And I think one of the things that I really see potential when it comes to big data, back to the actual original topic, is really in exploring the value chain. So much value comes into Lagos, but I can bet you most banks don't actually know where exactly the money that most of their market really is made, They don't really know, they don't understand how, they might not really understand exactly what that value chain looks like. And it shows because, when the big distributor, quote unquote, moves his business, everybody's pleading for him. And over the next 10 years, what banks are going to have to figure out is how to dissect that value chain, because what's at stake are your net interest margins. You have a bunch of big wholesale account holders who can basically turn to banks tomorrow, right? With fintech, they can turn to banks tomorrow. And those are really where it is. So if you don't really do a great job of being able to map out, okay, this person is doing transfers to this person, and is doing transfers to this person, what's the relationship? Is there a wholesaler distributor relationship? How can we enable that relationship with technology and with data, right? But I think in other parts of the country, what is actually happening is that we don't know enough, and so we can't bring stakeholders together. But if we spend more time really understanding what's going on in those parts of the country, we would actually be surprised that there's probably things at far more scale. Just to close out, I had the privilege of visiting a hub in Jos undercover, right? So sometimes I just get in a car and I just drive. And I was in Jos and I popped into N-Hub. And it's amazing the kind of technology stuff they're working on. They're working on stuff that has national security implications, right? In Jos, right? There's people working on interesting stuff in Abuja, right? So there's a lot going on across the country. I just think that many times people don't really take the time to leave Lagos. And Lagos is the ugliest part of this country, so I don't know why people like to stay here. But, I think if people actually just got out more and went to see the country, they would actually see more.
But when you say in Jos, national security implications, on what scale?
I mean, it's going to start small, right? So think, 30 engineers working on the technology that basically helps to keep us safe in terms of parsing terrorist communication, in terms of helping the National Security Office figure out what kind of words terrorists typically use to communicate, what hotbed of communication is happening, in places like Bauchi or in other parts of the country where some of these terrorists may be congregated. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Obviously, I can't see everything, but I'm just trying to point out that there's a lot going on in places that are not Lagos. And if we actually got out more, we would see that maybe you might not be able to have a conversation of this scale outside of Lagos, but you would have maybe more interesting conversations in those parts of the country.
So my question to you is how do we surmount that particular problem? He says we need to go out there, we need to get to know more. How do we do this?
One of the bigger things is technology needs to be available to everybody, right? I think it's important that we make technology and the knowledge of the application of technology available to everybody. And we just need to take that bold step as Nigerians to decide that we will do this, and we will, based on cost constraints, etc., we'll do it in 3 places, over time. Now, the other part is that for us, we are leveraging the industrial revolution around cloud computing, which means that we've made these technologies available in our data centers, and you can actually connect to them if you have internet. That's all you need. You need good internet connection, and that technology is available for you to use. So you can gather weather information, right? How is the weather in Jos? And how has the weather been over 3 years? And use that to predict the yield of tomatoes or apples that are only grown there, right? You can decide what is the soil sample here and how has that changed over time and how will that impact on yield. But the most important thing is that you can do that today. And I think that whether you're in the south-south, whether you're in the north, whether you're in the east, as long as you have that platform, and we provide that platform through Microsoft Azure, and it doesn't matter whether it's open source, whether you love open source, you love Windows, it doesn't really matter. It's there for you today.
As a small business?
Yeah, so as what?
As a small business, I mean, what's the smallest in terms of scale that you could possibly serve?
I think the most important, anybody can access it and anybody can use it. I think the most important thing is connecting, and this is what this event is here for, connecting small businesses with the tech people who can help them to make sense of this. So you're a small business, you're here today. The whole idea is that make sure you're talking to a tech company here today and ask the person about big data. Ask me about, my transaction information. How can I use that to better my business? What are the peak periods when people are using my product, right? What are the peak periods when, people are coming into my store? And how can I relate that to what's happening in Nigeria, right? Obviously people buy more umbrellas during the rainy season. It's that kind of logic, but there's so much data out there. And as a small business, the whole idea is that you need to be able to just find the right, there are startups here, there are people here that have the technical know-how. The technology is available in the cloud already for you, and you have the idea. So why don't we bring these 3 people together to start making things happen as a small business?
One thing I just want to say, I think, first of all, the products that these small businesses need are already here, right? I mean, we're talking about yield and tomatoes and being able to use data to measure. There's companies like Verdant Technologies. There's a lot of companies that are working in that space and are actually informing farmers and leveraging big data to be able to inform farmers about how they can improve their yield. The biggest challenge we have, to be quite honest with you, is we don't have the billions of naira that banks do, so we can't push those products at scale. It's true.
So wait, why are banks doing that? And he could ask his right.
Why are the banks not doing this? Why are the banks not doing that? Why are they trying to build their own?
So let me try and clarify that. Are you saying that the banks are not assisting you in scaling the business the way you should, and they're trying to do it in competition with you?
Well, not me. I work for banks.
But in competition with the tech sector.
No, I'm just saying that the banks should really act as they should act as an integrator, right? If I'm a farmer, I should be able to access Verdant technology through Diamond Bank, right? And maybe Diamond Bank can package some products to help me. Maybe insurance, maybe some yield credit. You know what I mean? We gotta have product managers in these banks that are focused on how can we take multiple tools from different places and help our customers, and less of we want to build our own, thing and spend millions of naira on it and market it, because you're a bank, you're not a tech company. I'm sorry.
I guess I should let you respond to that, Uzoma.
I really can't wait to be a small business again, so that I can benefit and leverage of all the technology. No, I think it's not. So we are an organization where I would tell you that 90% of our businesses, or 95, are small businesses. 99% of our customers are small people that don't have millions. So, you know, you have to, and then a lot of our customers are not comfortable with technology at all. So here we are spending millions on technology, but we're spending much more than, what we're spending much more on is transformation. We're transforming people. In this room now, people have mobile phones. What do they use their mobile phones for? It is not for transformative stuff. Because first, they don't understand it. And so that's the whole idea of Techfest, you know, creating that awareness that you can do much more with what you already have here. We spend a lot of money actually. I mean, like, we have a product called Better Product, and we spent more resources educating people on trusting technology. So, you know, we can get a lot of technology out there, but people don't trust it. So you have to employ resources to show people, to say, let's demystify it. That's what Tech Talk is about. Let us, you know, big data is not so complex. Big data is using more information around you to take a better decision. And so I don't think it's, so I think the problem, right, is that sometimes we just think, okay, here's the technology, use it. I mean, in my organization, it's taken us 5-6 years, right, to become paperless. And it took a lot of, you know, convincing, strategizing for people to say, you know, we won't use paper anymore. And that's an organization, that's a bank. So imagine the man on the street that is used to cash, is used to even not trusting, using mobile phones for not even SMS. And suddenly you're telling them to just take a leap of faith. You have to create that trust environment, and then you have to show that it is usable. And that is actually where a lot of education is required before we know. So it is, what are these people doing? How high is their trust level? And what is the strategy for the guy in the north is going to be different from the guy in the east. It's going to be different from the guy somewhere in Ekpe in Lagos. So that is what we have to take into consideration before we decide what technology is there. Because the farmer might not take that advice. He might say, my forefathers did it this way, and I'm going to continue doing this way. Maybe you guys can do that. So sometimes we underestimate the constraint of changing people's mindset because they don't trust. They don't trust the people in the city. They don't trust the people who are bringing these things to actually do things. So that's what we in Diamond Bank want to focus on. We come up with the technology, but we spend a lot of time in packaging that education and that building that trust to drive those solutions. And I think that's where we are different. And so if you look at all the transformative proud work that we have done in the last 5 years, it's actually helping people use technology in a better way at the lower end of the pyramid and not at the higher end.
If you allow me to mediate. I would say I imagine a world where at the end of the day, a bank can actually, within its application, provide you access to a financial services provider that can help you with your business because it knows you well enough. I imagine a world where, you know, you open a Diamond Bank application and it knows that Wale is a farmer, right? And it says, oh, by the way, there's someone who can provide you with information about weather. Click on X and, you know, be contacted by that person. There is that whole economy that I can tell you is being built today in Nigeria, where you will see banks partnering with, you know, other small businesses through technology to provide services to small businesses. And I think that's the way to go. And the more banks are able to open their, what you call APIs, their application programming interfaces, and they are able to allow people to trust them and consume those APIs to offer banking services through those people, the small businesses ultimately will win, you know, because then it becomes more accessible to them. So I think a way to balance this is maybe doing something like open banking as an example, which I don't want to veer into, but you know,
okay, so
that may be a middle way, and I think people are thinking about that today.
When you say middle way, if I use your service and then I use your service and optimize them in the way you've described, then why should I use a bank? There's no need for a bank to exist.
Well, you need a bank.
Yeah, let E tell about why
I'll tell you why you need a bank.
No, I mean the logical conclusion of that progression is...
But you know, it's too much of a leap, right? Yeah. I'll be honest, right? So here's my point, right? And you know, it's actually at the heart of this, you know, bank, you know, banks are dying. I mean, it's all noise. Because look, at the end of the day, right, there are only 20-something people, right? Names that are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria to hold deposits. That's not going to change, right? It's just not going to change. So at that very basic level, you do still need a bank. However, right, the challenge is, how do we ensure that people actually get value from a bank? Because, you know, if you studied political science, legitimacy comes from two ways, right? There's authority, right? And then the other thing is actually like functionality. And today, banks exist as banks only because they have a license. And that's why these type of conversations are coming up. You know, what else has a bank done for me? That's the question everybody else is asking. And I think the moment banks understand that, you know, they are a path, they're a channel for people to access products, services that can improve their lives, especially financially, right? That completely changes their mindset about, you know, whether they're going to live or die. The banks, at the end of the day, what's really going to happen is that the banks like Diamond Bank that are actually making an effort to be relevant to their customers' lives, right, will be alive. And then the banks that decide they want to only lend to Dangote, next week Dangote will open a bank and compete with them. And those are the people they really have to be afraid of, not us.
Okay, so my question to you is, how do you see big data transforming the nature of banking in the medium to long term?
So I think it's an exciting future with big data. Because with big data, I don't have to rely. I think, first of all, I think what big data is going to do, if we integrate it properly into our businesses and life, it's going to help us make better decisions. And when you make better decisions, it means that I'm taking, so I'll give you a typical example. So, you know, when I interview people, there are two sources of information. There is their CV that they give to you that is a representation of what they want you to see of them, and there's their social media, for example. So you look at someone's CV, and then you go into social media and look at their Twitter, their Instagram, and their Facebook page.
Is that legitimate? Are you allowed to do this?
And their Facebook page, and you find that it's public information, and you find that what they say on their CV and what they actually do, you know, one says, the CV says, I like to read. And the other one, you say, partying all the time, partying all the time, right? So that's their hobby, meeting people, engaging. So, and what I'm trying to say there is that they are representing themselves as an introvert on their CV, but meanwhile they're an extrovert. So if I'm looking for an extrovert, so that kind of thing. And that's what, and so imagine taking that to lending. If I'm just relying on your financial statement, and for your financial statement represents only 20% of your expenditure, and 80% is in that big data world of, you know, how much you give to your village, how much cash you pay. And if I can take all that and know that, you know, this is how much he spends on charity, this is how much he spends on different things, it gives me an idea of not your ability to pay, but your willingness, your character, right, of to pay. And those kind of things will help us begin to take more financial risk and reduce the operational risk. So we're in the business of risk. And, you know, that's why banks are always going to be relevant. One, it's not about just the license. The license represents trust that you can keep people's money. The risk means that no risk, no return, but it's taking the right type of risk, not the operational type. So it is reduce the operational risk, increase the financial risk. That means that I can now wake up and say, okay, based on your data, I don't even know you, you just walk into my organization, and based on your data, I can say yes or no to a loan at a cost, at a price that is reasonable, because the more information I have, the less risk there is, and the more I can lend to you at a lower price. That's the opportunity of big data for banks. And it is those who say, you know, I'm not going to rely on, you know, my 20 years experience in banking, because that's irrelevant. I'm going to rely on an algorithm that says that I've taken all this information and I've created that the probability of this guy going to default is low, irrespective of the fact that you have not seen him before in your life. That's what's going to make a change. And that is what big data represents for businesses in the world.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree with that, right? But I think more importantly, right, is actually big data is an easy way for you to know your customers at scale,
Yeah.
right? One of the interesting things I've said is that, you know, is there really a bank in Nigeria that can manage 50 million or 20 million customers, right? Given the way customers today interact with banks, do we have enough ATMs? Do we have enough? POS devices? Do we have? If we actually have, you know, we always complain about financial inclusion. If people are actually included, can we serve them? Not today, right?
Not with the existing structure, not with POSs,
not with
ATMs.
Exactly.
It has to be a new model, which is mobile, which everybody has.
But even with mobile, right? USSD services are not as, you know, it's not uhuru there,
Yeah.
right? There are challenges. So my whole point is, at the end of the day, what we have to default to as we make investments about how we will grow our customer bases, whether it's in banking or whether it's small businesses or whatever it is that we have to lead with data.
Of course.
And we have to lead with data by knowing which customers, right, are actually delivering the kind of returns that would justify an investment. And it's on that basis that we'll go to the capital markets and raise money so we can continue to do what we're doing.
Now he's thinking like a banker.
Now you're thinking like a banker.
I always say I'm an investment banker with a hoodie. But
my question to you is, so, and it's a question I've asked about the constraints. How do you scale this? So you cannot identify people for loans and their profiles if they're not on social media. So if I live in my village, I don't have a Facebook account, I don't have any social media accounts. How do you profile me?
yeah, I mean, so that's where big data comes in. You probably bought phone credit, probably, right? You probably have a group of people who you talk to, right? Who you call, who you reach out to for advice or help. You probably belong to some kind of social group, right? So even if you're not on social media, we can actually gather even far more pertinent, if you ask me, data points about who you are and what you do for a living, right? And even better, I think
practical examples of
practical example, right? If let's say I want to, one of the things I think we haven't even started to explore well, and I think over the next 3 to 5 years, banks will have to look at this very carefully if they really want to thrive, is supply chain lending, right? Today, all you have is just your BG, right? Like bring your bank guarantee, and then if you're rich enough to get a bank guarantee, everything follows from there. But realistically, that's not really how it works, right? You know, each commodity is credit. So imagine a world where, just like it works on the streets, the way you get gala is not that that guy who is hawking gala actually paid for the gala. Is that he's been given 10 gala to go and sell. If he brings back the money for the 10 gala, they'll give him another 10. He brings back the money for that, give him another 10, and then his margin is keeping the margin, right? I think ultimately where big data is taking us is that can we identify supply chains by leveraging transactions that are happening within our bank? Can we accelerate supply chains by leveraging data that's in our bank? I think that data is far more pertinent than social media data, right? And actually, it's less risky because I still hold the product, right? And my loss can be limited. So that's what I'm talking about when I say I think we can get much better data, quite frankly, if we actually paid attention to it. But I think the biggest problem I would say most banks I've seen have is that no one has really done the work to actually invest in data structuring. You know, everybody wants to put their data in Hadoop. But at the end of the day, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't know your customer, you haven't figured out the data points that actually come onto them, you can't tell who's a student. Some banks are doing better jobs of this than others, but you can't tell who's a student, who's working for banks, you know, if you can't tell who your customer really, really is, even with all the data that they're giving you, you can't structure your data. You're never going to understand the value chain.
So just to help too, there, you know, we have these customers in the marketplace called beta customers, and so when we started up with them, so we took banking to them because, I mean, if you go to Ido Market, we have a branch 500 meters from the market. Not one of them actually going to the branch because, first of all, their banking hours, our banking hours and their work hours are completely different. We speak, you know, they speak a different language from the banking English that they speak in the branches, so they're just not comfortable. But so we took banking, so we created a new proposition called Better Proposition, the Better Banking. That went out there, collected the money, and they got the SMS credit. So it was USSD-based banking. One thing we found from the data is that, being at the bottom of the pyramid doesn't mean you're poor. It just means that you didn't trust the banking system then. And so we came with a solution that said, these guys were making a lot of money. Secondly, what did we find? That they want to save. So the propensity to save is so high, higher there compared to city people. And then it meant to them as well, because they wanted to separate their lending from their saving, because they're saving for their children. They're saving for a better life for their people coming behind them. So now, a new program has come up called Better Quick Loan. And so we are lending quickly, 10 minutes. In fact, we just started the beta about 2 weeks ago. We're lending based on the data that we have, which is not cloud-based. It is just USSD, your banking transaction, what you're buying, what you're selling, how much airtime you're getting, and we're lending based on that. And the fact that you're saving is an indication that there is more to life than just this quick transaction. So that's the opportunity that we see. And then when, should I say, we get better infrastructure, cloud, then we're making much better decisions, and we're lending at a wider and larger scale. That's the opportunity that we see even today, without even before that technology gets to other parts of the country where cloud or better quality data is richer.
Would you like to make some comments on that?
I think they've both spoken well. It makes a lot of sense. Data quality, data governance continues to be important for you to make sense of big data. I think improving customer service, as you've mentioned, access to loans is important. The other part that is important for a bank is how to prevent fraud. I think if you think about it, leveraging big data for fraud analytics is going to be one of the biggest things going forward. You need to be able to look at behavioral patterns, which is not structured. But there needs to be the ability to get those behavioral patterns, learn them over time, and know that, every time Wale presses his password on the Diamond Bank app, he always makes a mistake, replacing S with Y. That's Wale's behavior. And anytime anybody else comes up and does something different, I flag it and I say, this may not be Wale. Can somebody check and make sure that it is, Wale doing that? That is all data. So I think you're going to get to a situation where you're going to see big data and advanced analytics combined together to really prevent cybercrime and fraud, as a method of driving value down the line. So that's something that's super important too.
Okay. I think we've run out of time for even a general Q&A session. So I'd just like to get your last comments on this specific topic and then wrap up this conversation and move on to the next panel.
Okay, so I think for me, what I would say, I think where we're going to is a place where small businesses, for small businesses, when I decide I want to start a business, it'll be, going either on my phone or on a solution and getting my bank account opened, having cloud-based solution that helps me grab an accounting, a banking package and a payments package all together without actually leaving my house. That's where I see the future of big data for small businesses. And also that package includes how to get on, how to use technology, how to leverage big data in practical ways that just improves the probability of the small businesses to survive. Because many businesses start, a lot fail. So people that develop a solution that creates the best way for you to survive is what's going to win.
I think my final thought is really around how are we thinking about talent for big data, right? It's a point we haven't really got in touch on, and we perhaps don't have the time to touch on. But I think, technology was the last wave, coding was the last wave. We rode that wave. I think we're kind of getting to the end of that wave, right? Now we have to start thinking about the next wave is definitely data, and how can we build a data economy? How can we build talent for a data economy in today, right? We have the raw analytical skill, and we can start to really invest in doing so. And then if we can get that piece right, I think you start to see a lot more practical applications.
I think final thoughts are data continues to be very important. Data, big data is something that we should continue to leverage. As a company, we actually have, just so you guys know, we have a stand there. There's a data scientist, sitting there waiting to talk and engage with people. They're going to show you how to do simple things using data, creating a bot using data, today, leveraging data science. So the guys are there. We're democratizing data. We have provided a platform that allows you to explore and, as Uzoma says, spark your creativity. So please join us there and see how that goes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause for our three panelists? Uzoma Dozie.
My name is William. So, we heard about the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal with Facebook and everything. And specifically, they said that they had tried their techniques in Nigeria in 2015 because we have such lax and non-existent privacy laws. So my question is basically, what ways are we advocating or trying to self-regulate, to not infringe on, privacy laws, even though they are non-existent in this country, so we don't cross moral blindness and try to profiteer off finding data trends and whatnot.
Okay, I think I'll just talk as a technology provider that has the same scale or a larger scale than Facebook. One of the things that is really, really big today is privacy and how you're enabling people to take privacy into their own hands. And we are making sure that across all our solutions and all our tools, you are able to opt in and opt out of what kind of information you provide. And if you notice that Facebook is now taking applications off their platform, the same thing goes for us. We're consistently looking at applications that don't meet the privacy requirements. Even before you submit an application now, we ensure that you are at least meeting some level of privacy requirement. You are giving people the ability to turn off location. If I don't want you to know my location, you shouldn't, right? And if you're supposed to do that per app. So organizations are becoming more responsible to allow people to take their privacy into their own hands. So if you don't want to, then you don't need to allow it to happen. And people need to write their applications as such.
One thing I'll say, 2015 was a long time ago. And what I would say, I don't think I agree that we have non-existent data privacy laws. We have the Digital Rights Bill has already been passed. And if you go and read that bill, there's definitely, I actually think sometimes very inane data protection and privacy protection laws. I think to some extent we kind of veered off a little bit to an extreme. But I think over time, what you would actually find is that if you become that corporation that is willfully flouts data privacy, well, you're going to lose customers. And nobody wants to lose customers. So at the end of the day, I feel like the economics would eventually regulate everybody, right? And for firms like us, we don't even have that luxury because we have to comply with Digital Rights Bill. We have to comply with GDPR. We also have to comply with the US laws as well because we're incorporated there. So we take incredible precautions to make sure people have their privacy.
So I think for us it's quite easy. We're banks, but we're actually in the trust business, and privacy is actually at the core of our business. So the challenge for us is as we go take our business from physical to digital, it's incorporating those physical laws into our digital infrastructure. Secondly, because our business is changing from doing everything ourselves to collaborating, it's ensuring that our partners who we partner with, work to the same privacy and trust standards that we do, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So that's how we see it.
Okay, thank you. Can we take a question from that side of the room?
There's one in the...
Okay, yeah. The gentleman in the blue cap.
Hello, thank you. My name is Chino Soeke. I created a startup business that connects, it's a website that connects clients with freelancers. That's those that do websites, logo, and all those things. So my question is, how can I generate clients to use that website? Because I have creators already. I have over 30 creators, but my main problem is clients. I've done Instagram ads, Twitter, all those things. It doesn't really generate that much. So how can I get clients to use the website I made? And the website is techie.com in case there are business owners here that need it. techky.com.ng.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great one. Well, I guess you're in the right place. I'll tell you of a hack we used at Andela way back when. So what a lot of people don't know was that the way we actually started to get jobs for Andela, because we had the exact same problem, was that we would go to sites like, at the time, now they're called Upwork, but back in the day, there were 2 different sites, which I now forget the name, but now it's called Upwork. We would go there, we would list, we would bid for jobs, then we would take the jobs that we won, and then assign them to our at the time we called them fellows, our software engineers, so they could build, and then we would make money on the margin on that. So I think if you want to build, you can. There's literally demand all over the internet, right? Just lying there waiting. So if you want that demand, you can take work from Upwork, bid for it in your own private space, find the people who are going to do the work, take it back to Upwork, So there's ways to do these things. You just have to be very driven and determined. You can't wait for the customer to come to you. Sometimes you have to go to the customer.
Okay, I think we'll take the last question from someone on this side of the room.
My name is Bashir. I'm the founder of a startup called VenHub. It's a blockchain startup. I didn't really start the conversation here, but I heard about data privacy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with blockchain technology. I'm just trying to understand what do you think about the blockchain technology as it relates to data privacy, since we are talking about a blockchain technology that is totally open and is totally decentralized and distributed. So the issue of data privacy and people stealing your data in terms of blockchain technology, I think blockchain technology can really help in solving that. So I just want to get your opinion on what you think about utilizing blockchain technology to solve this problem. Thank you.
So you're right. So the blockchain technology is about, distributed information, but it's also, I think it's also private as well, to the fact that if it's my own data, I can keep my data and I can give permissions to whoever I want to give that permission to. So you own your own data. However, I think that it's a new technology, I think that's the beauty about understanding what your capabilities are. So as a bank, we know that we have an infrastructure that serves 80% of our customers, and then we now work and collaborate with guys like who actually do more innovative and creative work, who push those boundaries. And when they come up, when we find solutions, when we find, good use case for blockchain that is more cost effective for a new area that we want to go into, then we use it. But if for existing infrastructure, unless we need to change it, then we look at what's the next best possible infrastructure with minimum disruption to our customers. Because in the end, you can't stop your business, right, to put in a new solution that might affect your core objective, which is customer experience.
I think blockchain is a great technology. It's evolving, and I think it does work on trust, and it could help build trust if you are participating in a specific blockchain-based application, as an example. And I do think that companies will continue to explore what they can do. We at Microsoft locally, we're exploring with some companies what they can do and what kind of problems can be solved with blockchain. Nothing to do with cryptocurrency here, just pure smart contracts, trust, participating, and using that to solve supply chain problem, PO problems, trade finance as an example. So yes, there are good applications, even agriculture, contracting, smart contracts on agricultural solutions. And yes, it does help with trust. So if that's what you do, keep doing it. I'm sure it's going to evolve over time, and you'll find a place, and look for a problem to solve. That's my advice to you. Look for specific problems to solve, and then it will take on.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And another round of applause for our panelists, please.
Thank you.